Welcome to Chat Room. I'm with my co-host Michael,
Hey there.
and today we are talking about why people are moving to the state of Tennessee. We're going to give a list of facts, both of us, and kind of compare and contrast between those facts. Make sure you like and subscribe, and I'm going to leave it at that. All right, Michael. So since we're talking about today, why people are moving to Tennessee, and I mean that's kind of like a broad statement, but it's shown actual facts that a lot of people from California, up north, Chicago, mostly from the northern states and out west are moving to Tennessee. Families, entrepreneurs, just about anybody. I mean, you know what I mean? So, well, you start off first.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, it's interesting because while this has certainly escalated a lot over the last 2 years, especially, I worked for a publication that was kind of a tourist guide to Chattanooga specifically. And we'd already been seeing these increasing trends, and a lot of it was Chattanooga focused because of our gig city here. It's become a good place to retire. But yeah, over the last 2 years, it's become so much more than that. Right at the kind of start of the pandemic, U-Haul did a survey kind of tracking rentals and where people were going to, and they saw that Tennessee, Texas, and Florida, more people moving to those states than any other, and that was in 2020, so again, at the start of it. But yeah, you've also got UTK, our university in Knoxville, which is looking at this as it could impact both the school but just also the region. And they're saying that we could gain like a million new residents by 2040. And honestly, that feels like an undercount. Nashville alone is just blowing up, but really, yeah,
Yeah,
statewide.
Nashville is huge.
Oh, yeah.
It's uncontrollable how much that city's growing.
Yeah, and we could probably even get to talking about some kind of like how that's impacting the community itself, because there's also somewhat of an exodus from Nashville proper by people that live there. But yeah, in general, like you said, it's those western states, the
Hmm.
northern states, and there's a lot of reasons.
Right. And really, it's not even just people. Big companies as well is moving. You know what I mean?
True.
A lot of big companies going to Nashville. One of the biggest companies for firearms in the whole country, Smith and Wesson, to Maryville, Tennessee. So that's pretty big for Tennessee.
Yeah, and that again is kind of a trend that's been going on, and I'm sure it's somewhat similar to kind of the reasons why people are moving too. Just to hit a one that is pretty clear for businesses, but also people is lower taxes. And I specifically looked at California and New York to see how that would compare. And sales tax is a little higher here. If you think property tax and how much that costs, Tennessee is at 294 average, 294,000, which still feels high.
Are you saying that for property tax or
Yeah,
state tax?
yeah, sorry for. So that's like the property value for the
Okay.
average home is that, while in California it's 800,000,
Right.
is the average price of a home. In New York it's 400,000, so you just know that you're just paying so much more on that front.
Yeah. And then we don't even have state income tax at all. So that helps out a lot.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, well, and yeah, we're a little higher on sales tax, but yeah, we pretty much make up for it for a lot of people by
Hmm.
not having income tax.
So I think the first bullet point to moving to Tennessee, while company, families, individuals from everywhere are moving to Tennessee, is the taxes. I mean, that's just probably like one of the top reasons. It's probably my top 10 reasons why I think, and I would say it's an actual fact that that's why.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you and I have known many people that even just hopped the state line from Georgia to Tennessee just to get that benefit of taxes, on income. And that's just one southern state to another southern state. But yeah, these other states, it's a whole big deal.
So one bullet point I wanted to hit on was, so one thing that a lot of people kind of forget about Tennessee. It's not really like a financial reason. It's not really like a school reason. It's just the placement that it is in America. Where how like where we live in Chattanooga, we can be in Florida in 8 hours. We can be in Chicago in 8 hours. You know what I mean? We can be in Texas in 10 to 16 hours, depending on what part of Texas.
Yeah.
You You can be in Ohio in like 5 hours. You can be in Kentucky like 3 hours. You can be, I mean, you can go so many places besides pretty much out west within that 20-hour commute. You know what I mean? And that's speaking on like a car. We have even plane rides. You pretty much can get anywhere.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I mean, again, speaking from a Chattanooga point of view, I always tell people I'm, 2.5 hours from Birmingham, 1.5 to 2 hours to Huntsville, Nashville 2 hours, Knoxville, an hour and a half to 2 hours, Atlanta 2 hours. So
Hmm.
that's just driving. And yeah, you mentioned Florida, Chicago, and beyond. And yeah, kind of what, you bring flying into the mix. Atlanta, I think, just reclaimed the busiest airport in
Hmm.
America
Oh
this
yeah.
last year. And yeah, that's so many flights, Delta, of course, will direct you to Atlanta. And for us, that's so convenient. We're
Right.
already right there.
Yeah, you can even skip that flight and kind of, drive there to Atlanta and park and probably save a lot of money from commuting from like Texas to Atlanta to go overseas.
Yeah, definitely. And as Nashville becomes more and more of a hub, I've done that in the past with Nashville, not as much because I don't think there's any major carrier that uses that as their home base. But, similarly, that's going to become more of an international, airport that serves more and more countries and communities because of how big that city is. And it already did, a lot of travel. So, yeah,
Hmm.
I mean, Tennessee, you're right. It's very, very central.
Right. And so another bullet point why I think a lot of people are moving to sea, and I don't think this one really, well, I guess it could go with companies, I guess like maybe music labels or something like that if they want to branch into like the country music scene. But I mean, Tennessee's pretty much the home of country, and country music's actually listened to by people throughout America. Well, actually throughout the world. But to be like the home of that genre of music, that I think that's a lot of especially younger people that want to be in that industry, whether they're music producers, want to work for music labels, want to sing country music, want to be a part of a band. You know what I mean? So to be in Tennessee, it probably ups your chances of furthering your career in that genre of music.
Well, and what's interesting too is I've seen this firsthand because I have friends that work not quite, in necessarily like the coolest jobs in the music industry, but
Right.
they work in Nashville either for record labels or for venues. And because of that infrastructure for country artists, having record labels, having A&R scouts, having record pressing companies there, it basically sowed the seed for all these other genres of music too.
Hmm.
So Jack White, for instance, is a famous rocker. He's from Detroit. He moved to Nashville, set up Third Man Records. That's
Right.
been really important, and they do some country, but it's mostly not country. It's very diverse what he covers and bring artists that he brings in. But yeah, like my roommate's brother works for a classical music record label, and they are based out of Nashville. And I don't know how much classical music is necessarily being made there, but again, I think a lot of why that was set up is because they have the infrastructure. You have schools like Belmont,
Hmm.
which have recording, engineer career paths.
Right.
And yeah, whether you want to be a country artist or even just, a rock artist, a singer-songwriter, Nashville is kind of the destination.
Yeah, that's definitely true. And I can't tell you how many colleges that we've probably got at least 10 colleges in the top 100 colleges in America in Tennessee. When you think about it, Vanderbilt, Belmont, UTK, MTSU. I mean,
Yeah,
those schools are not even, I would say, 50 miles apart.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know what I mean? Besides Knoxville, but I mean that's crazy. And then University of Tennessee at Chattanooga, University of Memphis. I mean Austin P, Tennessee Tech. I mean the list just keeps going. I'm missing a bunch. And we've got one of the number one community colleges in America, and some of the number one programs in that community college in America. Not just Tennessee, but America.
Yeah, that is definitely a big resource. It's kind of why Volkswagen decided to come here and something they've even helped shore up and support. They've worked with UTC, they've worked with Chattanooga State, which is a community college in Chattanooga, to kind of implement even more programs on top of what they were already doing to help get a better, more skilled, more educated workforce to then go back and work for not just Volkswagen, but any other companies here. And that's true across the state.
Oh yeah. So, do you have any big bullet points? Any more big bullet points? Why people are moving to Tennessee?
Yeah, this kind of goes into what I was saying earlier with housing costs too, and just general taxes. But there is more available housing here for lower cost, and especially as people have been able to work remotely, keep their jobs,
Mm-hmm.
in these states that do have higher wages, but are like, oh, well, we don't want to go to the office. We don't have to go to the office, so we're going to move to a state that, maybe is more beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
We have a lot of scenic value here,
Oh
but
yeah, the
also,
hiking is pretty
like,
good.
again, just better cost for and better cost of living. So
Right.
they're able to keep their New York wages, their, Sacramento wages, their San Francisco wage, wherever, and go here and live here. And I mean, I can't see why that wouldn't be a benefit. And clearly, a lot of people are taking advantage of that.
So another reason I think people are moving to Tennessee, and I'm not really sure on how accurate this is. There's no real like stats or any good resources that talk about this, but in my mind, I'm thinking, like we said, Tennessee, like the location, it's being in the middle of the country. So, I mean, being in the middle of the country, you have the most neutral weather. It's not going to be scorching hot every single day. Now, Tennessee does get some hot days, don't get me wrong, but it's not going to be your Florida heat, and you're not gonna have your upstate winters like New York, Michigan. So like if you want a winter that doesn't have blizzards and doesn't have street clearings, but you also want a summer that's not just completely hot all the time. You know what I mean? It's you have your hot days, you have your beautiful days, you have your on the more chilly side days. It's just in Tennessee, I feel like we don't even know what we're gonna wake up to. Like if we're gonna have rain, 99 degrees or 100 degrees, or if we're gonna have a cold winter like day with snow. It's honestly like a mystery. Our weathermen can't even keep up with it.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. And I'd say that's probably not going to be an argument for why Californians may move here, because I know my aunt lives in California and she only had to buy an AC unit in the last 5 years
Yeah.
because they've started to get more heat waves. But New Yorkers, a lot of the ones that kind of became rich or wealthy or just retire, there's a reason you have so many kind of quote unquote snowbirds that will spend part of the year in Florida and part of the year in New York and kind of living here, but again, maybe retaining that salary and that job
Hmm.
means that, yeah, they're not worried about blizzards as much. I mean, they could have a blizzard every year. We talk about the blizzard and we know which one we mean because we have so few of them that, when we do, it's a big event.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, flooding is really our biggest thing we have here, and we have tons of dams to help control that.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, we'll still have some surprise weather elements, but in general, we're no Oklahoma with tornadoes, we're no California with earthquakes, we're no New York with blizzards, we're no New Orleans, Florida with hurricanes. We're
Right.
nice, we're kind of central, we're fairly, yeah, contained as far as anything especially crazy.
Oh yeah. And I mean, if we do have a blizzard if somehow, which I mean, I think we've had something close to a blizzard before. I think it was when I was like younger, in the early 2000s, maybe. But
Yeah.
if we do have a blizzard or something close to it, just expect anywhere in Tennessee to be shut down for at least 3 weeks. Uh, Stock up on your hot chocolate, get some chicken noodle soup. It's gonna be a great vacation if nothing bad happened to your home or anything like that. So it's all taken care
Yeah, yeah.
of.
I mean, we definitely got a lot of snow days as a kid, and some of those snow days had no snow. So that's kind of how it is around here.
Or it melted by lunch.
That's how it be sometimes.
Yeah, it really be like that sometimes.
That's it. That's it.
Have 2 inches. Like Tennessee is probably one of the only places, or one of the few places that you can have 5 inches of snow when you wake up at 6 in the morning. And by the time you eat lunch, you have a completely green field with the sun coming over the mountain. I mean, that's all in about 5 hours.
Yep.
It's crazy.
That's
So
well put.
So we've said music, we've said schools, we've said low income, or not low income, but like low no state income tax and low property tax. I think I said country. The
Yep.
seasons are fairly mild.
One that I've seen a lot, and it's probably pretty true about a lot of the areas in the South in general, but is people's friendliness. I know we, have kind of a stereotypical Southern hospitality, but I think a lot of times that's well earned.
Southern charm.
Yeah, yeah. And that doesn't just mean bourbon or something.
Yeah.
But I've seen that pop up a lot, just kind of anecdotally. Journalists, especially like in Nashville or Chattanooga, are doing these kind of stories. They always find that one couple from like Seattle or wherever, and it's like, oh, well, what did you like here? It's like,
Right.
well, all the reasons that you and I, John, have already mentioned. Plus, they're just really nice, and it's a good community. A lot of the small towns, but Chattanooga too. We're kind of a big small town, and I feel it's part of the reason that I kind of fell back in love with Chattanooga when I
Hmm.
left for college. Is it's very welcome, but it's still big enough that you're not necessarily running into the same few people all the time, and there's enough to do. So
Right.
you know, we're friendly. I hope we're friendly.
So I didn't think I was going to talk about this, but it's in a way it's kind of funny, and in a way it's not funny, but because it needs to stop and the violence needs to stop. But another reason why I think people could possibly be moving to Tennessee is I don't know if this would make people move to Tennessee, but I feel like how I don't even know how to say it, but we have two of the most dangerous cities in the country now, and that's being Chattanooga and Memphis. So I don't know if people commute from other dangerous cities that were like, because if you look at the dangerous cities from like 2021 and 2022, or they're not the same top five cities.
Yeah.
So it's like makes me think like, do these people move to more dangerous cities? Like, is you think that's possible?
Okay. So how are you meaning that? Like just to clarify your point further.
Like the city of Chattanooga was not in the top 10 most dangerous cities
Yeah.
in like America and at any other year. So now it is. So like, why is that?
Yeah. Um, Man, I feel like there's so much I could say on this topic because if you just look at the last couple of years, especially with COVID, you just see violence on the rise in general.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it is growing like in America, but
Yeah.
yeah.
And I think it's telling that Nashville, that is one of the biggest growing cities,
Hmm.
does not have it. So I wouldn't say it's like violence is being imported or anything. I think there's other factors.
Right.
And well, you're not wrong. Chattanooga, especially at the moment that we're recording this, has been kind of dealing with a increased rash of gun violence in particular. I do remember in high school, kind of some of the same areas that now we're shocked when gun violence happens, that
Hmm.
those were areas we didn't go to at night
Yeah.
because Chattanooga's had this whole historic transformation. It's a big part of our story. We went from the most polluted city in the 70s, kind of had a rebirth in the 90s. But even as that was happening, we wouldn't go to Coolidge Park after like 10 in high
Right.
school
Yeah.
or after 9. And I specifically remember there being shootings and gun violence. So I think that while we might be higher in the metric now, yeah, it's hard to really equate it
Hmm.
just to
Yeah.
this.
I also feel like just with the population in Tennessee growing, the violence, it's kind of part of it. You know what I mean? Like it's gonna come with cons when your cities or the cities in Tennessee are booming. Those smaller hubs that you're talking about when we were, younger, those places get honestly probably worse at some degree because the population is doubling.
Yeah, it would be interesting just 'cause
I
yeah.
had to throw a twister in here.
Oh no, no, no. Well, and this was definitely not this issue specifically, but definitely something I was thinking of is while, I would think hopefully again that we would be very welcoming of, new people and the like. There's of course going to be some impacts.
Hmm.
Nashville, again, I know friends and people that are having to move further out because they're not working these high-paying jobs that are remote, and so they're no longer able to afford kind of the increasing property prices. So that's kind of one downside. But, it's just interesting to think about as people move around, what kind of impacts
Hmm.
those would have.
Hmm.
And, one thing I found on a local 3 News, they talked about how, and this was the year 2020, so they had 9 million people move. Basically, this is the pandemic kind of causing people since March to October, so that's like 6 months, and that was about 95,000 more people than the same period.
Mm-hmm.
And I bet that's only increased again because after 2 years, of companies allowing people, a lot of people at first were like, I want to move, but I don't know if my company is going to make me come back or whatnot, or, they quit their job. So they're moving, they're bringing kind of their values, their cultures, their traditions, even if we're just talking about like other fairly similar Americans,
Right.
from state to state. But, it'll have various impacts, and we're kind of used to it here in Chattanooga. Chattanooga's a tourism city. That was part of our rebirth. But, I'm curious what that's going to mean for our area. So we'll see.
Right. Well, do you think we hit all the bullet points to why people are moving to Tennessee, or do you have any more good points?
No, yeah, I think we said it all. I mean, there's a lot of reasons to move here, and I would like to think that these are some of the reasons you and I have stayed here as both either Chattanooga natives or, I've lived here except for again college since age 6. So
Right.
there's
Yeah.
there's a lot to love about Chattanooga, but there's, a lot to love about our state in general.
Right. Yeah. I definitely agree. And Tennessee's definitely a good place for young entrepreneurs as well, and just young people that want to easy coasting. Like it's just simple in Tennessee. It's not. There's nothing really to it. You know what I mean? It's just you go to work, you start a business, and you get a lot of good benefits from being in Tennessee versus other states. And we have a lot of good schools, including the high schools, a lot of good public schools, a lot of good magnet schools, a lot of good colleges. It's kind of like that one package. If you want something where you can go to church, you can have a good house, you can have a good job, have growing, assets as far as like real estate. It's just all around to me, Tennessee is a good place to be. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think what we're saying is, y'all feel free to move here. Come
Y'all,
join us.
you can hear it from yeah.